What's up, guys? We are here for another installment. This time it's going to be guard retention. All right. We're here again with Fanatics and Miss Sunny. So it should be a fun day. It's going to be a long one. I don't know how long it's going to be, but it's going to be long. All right. And one of the reasons is because there's just so many things your partner can do when they're guard passing. If we were to sit here and I was just to give you the reaction for every possible hand position and leg position and head position that your partner was going to try to use when passing, we'd be here for hundreds or thousands of hours, and it would be so long that no one would watch it, first of all. And second of all, it would just be way too much to retain, okay? For example, there's slightly different options where she's going to use one set of recoveries from here versus here, versus here, versus here, versus here. Like if I just split these up into different moves, we'd be here forever, because every position you're in, there's slightly different hand positions that you can use. You can be here, you can be here, you can be here. You can all different kinds of things from here, okay? So if we were just to sit here and I was to show you guys different counters and reattacks into your partner's legs or the upper body for every different hand or leg position your partner used, we'd be here way too long, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have an overlying theme that we're going to use when our partner's trying to pass us, okay? Instead of just going in and showing you every reaction, I'm going to give you goals from each certain position, and we're going to break these goals down into two different distinct categories: loose passing and tight passing. And we're going to look at what are our goals when our partner's loose passing us, and what are our goals when our partner's tight passing us, okay? When you work like this, you can go beyond what I'm teaching you, and you can start to incorporate some of your own ideas into the retention, okay? So when John teaches us retention, again, he doesn't show every different position. He always breaks it down into, okay, we want to make contact with our partner when our partner's loose passing, all right? So as she goes to come forward into us, we can't just be in a situation where our partner gets past our hip line, gets past our shoulder line, and goes into passes, okay? So we use common goals where as she goes to come in, I'm always looking to keep my partner in front of me. Okay, now you can do this in a million different ways. As she goes to outflank me, I can grab my partner like so. As she goes to outflank me, I can grab my partner like so. But I'm always interested in the same goals, putting my partner back in front of me, entangling legs, making points of contact, and then going into some kind of counter offense. Okay? My partner's tight passing me, for example, on half guard. Half guard, half guard. And she's looking to control my head and my shoulders. All right, we're always looking to get to a situation where a partner doesn't control my head and shoulders, and I can look to go into counter offense. Okay, I'm always looking to win the battle for inside position. So there's many ways I can clear my head from here, but as long as I have the common goal, the goal in mind of clear my head from my partner's cross base, now we can look to recover and go into our counter attacks. Okay, so what we're going to do as the bottom player is I'm going to give you specific goals when your partner's loose passing and specific goals when your partner's tight passing. Now, how you achieve those goals is up to you. There's many ways to do this. All right, so we're going to overlay everything with a common theme and certain goals from certain positions, and then we're going to go into specific situations on how we can achieve these goals and some of the most common variations of the passes that your partner will use, and we'll look at it from there. Okay. We have to make sure that we can always find ways to go from a defensive cycle into an offensive cycle. Okay, I'm going to be stressing this a lot as we continue. What you can't have is a situation where your partner is just constantly trying to pass your guard side to side, where your partner's just constantly pouring on the attacks and you're just defending the whole time. This is a losing battle, losing strategy. Okay, so instead of just retaining guard, what I don't want is to just be fighting off Toriandos, and then I go back this way, she goes the other way, and I go back this way, and she goes back the other way, and I'm just retaining the whole time. You need to get into the mindset of the second your partner fires off an attack, I'm not just retaining, I'm countering. So as she goes to fire off and she goes into a Toriando, I come in here, I strip her grip, and then I scoop a leg. And now from here, we can go in and start elevating and getting into our partner's legs, getting hands to the floor, and going into our own attacks, okay? What you can't have is a situation where your partner has 3 or 4 attacks, She's flanking. I'm here. I'm recovering. And then the whole time, she's just walking side to side, not using any energy. And I'm constantly bringing my knees to my chest. It's exhausting down here. All right, so I'm going to be stressing this a lot. As your partner goes into a certain attack, I cannot stay in the defensive cycle. I have to strip grips and then immediately look to go into some kind of offensive cycle. If she's down passing in a half guard, for example, same thing. I can't just be in a situation where she gets her knee free. I go to bridge, and now I recover. I get back to a half guard, and she goes back upright again. She starts passing again, and then I just feel like I'm losing this battle from here. I have to find a way to go from a defensive cycle into an offensive cycle, where I only retain my guard, but I also go right into follow-up attacks, where now I can start threatening her, and now she's thinking about defense instead of offense and passing me. Okay, so we're going to talk a lot more about that. But the main theme of this instructional is going to be goal setting. Okay, so you have a specific set of goals from a wide variety of positions, and to always maintain a situation where you can go from purely defensive to offensive cycles. You can't just stay in the defensive cycle the whole time when your partner throws your legs by, or your partner is continually passing from different positions, outflanking you, getting past your hip line, past your shoulder line, controlling your head and shoulders. You want to be in a situation where you can constantly go from the first initial attack when you're in a defensive cycle to an offensive cycle where you can go right into your counterattacks and then get the ball rolling in your favor. So now we understand that this instructional is going to be based upon a couple of overarching themes and a lot of goal setting from given positions. We're going to break this instructional down into 4 distinct groups, okay? Retaining guard, seated versus loose passing, retaining guard supine versus loose passing, retaining guard seated versus tight passing, and retaining guard from the top half guard when we're flattened out, okay? So what this will look like is we're seated versus a loose passer up on her feet, okay? How can we keep a partner in front of us from here? And how can we maintain a seated guard the entire time while she's trying to pass us? Now, a lot of this we saw in the seated versus, or in the seated guard instructional. But nonetheless, it's very important to go over in case some of you haven't seen the seated guard instructional, but you did buy the retention instructional, okay? So my partner goes to outflank me, for example. Okay, what can I do to not get my back taken or get my guard passed from here? How can I recover? How can I stay seated? And how can I, in turn, go into attacks, all right? The second situation will be supine versus a loose passer. Someone's standing up above us, she's passing from here, all right? This will encompass Toriano passes, where she goes to flank like so. She gets to the hip and the shoulder line. She goes back in front of me. This time, she stacks me. She puts my feet to the floor, and she goes to pass from here. How can I retain my guard from here and go into counterattacks? If she puts a leg inside, she goes inside foot. She goes cross hamstring and starts playing from here. Okay, we're in reverse Delahiva. A lot of our attacks that we looked at from here are supine versus, or we're from the supine guard instructional. Well, we can still go into some of those today. And she will steps in with the inside foot, and she goes straight hamstring, and she starts leg pommeling. And she goes on top pommel. And she goes here. How can I retain my guard against someone who's loose passing when I'm supine? And she looks to start beating me with the leg pommeling and looking to get past my legs. What can I do to retain an attack from here? Okay. So we have seated versus loose passing. We have supine versus loose passing. Where we also will look at various Ashigarami X-guard variations where a partner beats us with the Ashigarami, back steps. And now from here, what can we do to retain guard so she can't just immediately go knee on belly and look, start passing me from here, okay? Or start clearing this leg, walking to north-south, and start passing me from here, okay? The second my partner goes to back step, what can I be doing from here to retain my guard and go into counterattacks? She goes to back step. I can't just stay here, okay? What can I be doing? Strip grips and throw my legs back into place. All right. The third category will be seated guard versus a tight passer. Okay, now your partner can either start standing when she's tight passing, and she can move into a body lock. She can dive to a body lock from here. Okay, or she can start on her knees. So you're seated, and you're playing with someone who's not standing, and you're grounded. And now from here she can go and she can lock her hands in, and she can start tight passing, and she can start body locking and flattening you out from here. All right, so we have seated versus tight passing. Our fourth situation will be half guard versus tight passing, where a partner tries to flatten us out from half guard in various ways. And now she can go top, head, and arm. She can go under, over. She can go double unders. She can sit through and switch her hips and keep me flattened. There's various things she can do from here where I have to look to recover and go into counterattacks as well. Okay, so we have 4 distinct categories that I'll be looking at today. All right, all where we have specific goals. Then we have seated versus loose passing. We have supine versus loose passing. We have seated versus tight passing. And we have half guard versus tight passing. Okay? Normally, when your partner starts with a body lock, what's her goal? Most of the time to step to a half guard. So from here, she starts seated versus tight passing. She flattens me out. She steps to half guard, and now she goes to passing from here. So it's super important that you understand the link between body lock passing and half guard passing. All right. So 4 distinct categories that we're going to be looking at today, and then now we're going to look at goal setting for each opponent, or for each player. Sorry. All right, let's look at the goals of the top player, the guard passer. All right, so she's gonna be standing over me. All right, now if you've watched the passing instructional, which I'm sure many of you have, the goals remain the same for the guard passer. All right, she wants to, 1, get my feet and knees to point away from her. Okay, you'll see this with any guard pass. It's physically impossible for her to actually pass my guard if my feet and or my knees point towards her. Whenever you see any guard pass in the sport, whether it be a Toriando, where she passes my guard and she settles down, go ahead. Now she controls me, my feet and knees are pointing nowhere towards her. Whether it be a half guard pass, and she goes to pass me from here, my feet and knees are pointing nowhere towards her. My knees are pointing out here somewhere, my feet are pointing out there somewhere. Any kind of pass that you're looking at, whether it be from north-south, she goes to pass me. Right now, my knees are pointing towards her. When she pushes my knees away from my chest, now my knees are pointing up here somewhere, and my knees are no longer pointing towards her. So one of her goals is to always get my feet and knees pointing away from her. So the more that she can get my feet and knees pointing in the opposite direction of her, the easier it's going to be for her. So when she goes to throw my legs by, I'm looking to always have my feet and my knees pointing towards her. She goes to move around me. I'm always looking to get my feet and or my knees to point towards her so I can go back into my attacks. Another goal of hers is going to be to pin my head and shoulders, okay? Because now, as she goes to get my feet and knees to point away, this is step 1. Now, in order to actually pass my guard, she needs to control my head and my shoulders. If I can block her from doing that, it's going to be hard. So she has to control my head and my shoulders either before she passes the legs or after she passes the legs, okay? So she can do this. She can pass the legs first, now come down and control my head and my shoulders to get to a pass. Or, from a half guard, she can control my head and shoulders before she passes my legs. And now she can control and pin my head and shoulders, pass my legs second. And now she can establish a top pin and start to go to attacks. Another one of her goals, the third goal, is to create back exposure. Okay, so this is basically a mistake on my part. You don't see myself or my team creating back exposure a lot. This is the only reason why you would create back exposure when someone passes your guard is because you don't want to be scored on. So it's mostly in a points rule set, but it's not something that you want to do. So if someone goes to pass my guard and I don't want to get scored on, like you saw this in my match against Joao Rocha, where there was like 30 seconds left. If I got past, I was going to lose if I had a turtle. But you really don't want to create back exposure. Okay? Your whole thing should be to retain guard from here and put your partner back in front of you. Worst case scenario, they pass your guard to side control or mount, and then you just recover. But if they hit your back, it's a whole different story. Okay? So goal for her is if I make a mistake and she goes to pass my arm, I feel like I'm getting a pass from here for her to create back exposure where she puts so much pressure on me where now she creates back exposure and she goes into attacks. Nothing we're going to be looking at is going to be based around myself giving back exposure to my partner and then recovering guard from there. I'm a big advocate of just getting your guard passed if you feel like you're getting beat and not giving your back up. Okay. The worst case scenario is she passes me the side control. I get passed, and then from here, a few seconds later, I can recover. This is why you need to have good pin escapes. But if she goes to pass me and I start to create back exposure, and now she takes my back, now she's scoring high points, and I'm in real danger from here. Okay, there's not much danger if she just passes you to side control. So, yes, it is in her best interest to create back exposure. From here, from bottom, we're never going to be turning our back today. We're going to be doing everything from our back, looking to post, bring feet and legs back inside, and recover and go into counterattacks. Okay, there's also no counterattacks if you just give your back up. Okay, you can't attack your partner from there. Okay, and the fourth is to create so much pressure where you get limb extension and start creating submissions. So she can sit over for a kimura and start attacking like so. She can, if she's standing passing, she can toreando. And now as I go to recover, she can fall into my legs. Leg lock. And she can start going into attacks on my legs with heel hooks and various different submissions from there. So when I'm looking to extend and push my partner away to retain, I create limb extension and she creates submission exposure. Okay, we're also not going to be looking at that today because it's more about submission defense than it is guard retention. If my partner locks a kimura on me, it's more about stripping the grip of the kimura, not getting the kimura put behind my back. If she goes into my legs, it's more about leg lock defense than it is guard retention. Okay, so we're going to be looking at mainly stopping my partner when she's passing from getting my feet and knees pointing away and controlling my head and shoulders to look to pin me. Okay, nothing we're going to be doing today is going to be about submission defense and creating back exposure for her to look to go into defenses and re-guard. Okay, but nonetheless, when she's passing, these are her goals, and if she can achieve these goals, she's going to be winning from there. Okay, now let's look at what our goals are from the bottom position, based around what my partner's doing. Is she standing and loose passing, or is she tight passing? All right, so now we're going to look at goals for when our partner is loose passing. All right. Now, there's a specific set of goals when our partner is loose passing versus tight passing, and these will unify as you're sparring live. Okay, we'll look at that in a second. But when our partner is loose passing, we're looking to keep as many points of contact to our partner as possible. Okay, the max being 4. Right? 2 feet, 2 hands. I can keep contact with my partner. Okay. Now, this is also true when your partner's tight passing. Okay, if your partner's down on her knees and she's looking to body lock you, I always want to look to have contact with my partner when I have my hands on her. But I'm stressing this more than I would if my partner is on her knees because she's standing, and it's a situation where it's standing versus grounded. Okay, where she's standing over me and I'm on the ground, so she's much more mobile than I am. So it's much more important to keep contact with your partner to limit movement when you're seated and she's standing, or you're supine and she's standing. Okay, if she's on her knees, she has far less ability to move quickly from side to side. Okay, she's on her knees. When she's standing up and above me, now she can quickly run from side to side, and I can't follow her as fast because I'm seated. Okay, so when you're in a situation where your partner's standing over you, where she's standing and you're grounded, it's very, very important, more important than when she's on her knees, to keep control of your partner in some way. Look to form points of contact to your partner to limit movement, so that you can't just explode side to side, stay in an offensive cycle, and then tire you out and eventually get past your legs and in turn past your guard. Okay? If I don't have any points of contact from here and she goes to sprint to one side, now she immediately outflanks me. This is no good. If she's on her knees and I have no points of contact here, in order for her, if she wants to move to the side to outflank me, go ahead, I can easily follow her. Okay? But it's different when she's standing. When she's standing, I make sure that I always create some form of contact. Even if you can't get all 4 points of contact, I have some contact with my partner to limit movement. So with the second she goes to start throwing my legs by, I immediately recover and I make some kind of contact here. And now from here, we can put our partner back in front of us and we can look to go into our follow-up attacks, whatever they may be. Okay, so we keep some kind of contact with our partner. Our second goal when we're playing with a loose passer is to never let my partner get past my hip line or my shoulder line for any amount of time. Okay, what's absolutely unacceptable is for my partner to play a game where she's basically camping past my hip or my shoulder line. So when she goes to outflank me from here, this is no good. I can never let her stay past my hip line. I have to always turn and face her so that now I can put her back in front of me. It's the same thing here. So I can never have is a situation where my partner walks past my hip line and I just let her stay here for long amounts of time. Or now she starts putting hands on me, she starts pushing my knees away from my chest. I can't just let my partner stay from here. I have to do everything I can to start moving and start putting my partner back in front of me, getting my feet to point towards her again, and forming some kind of contact where I can go into counterattack from here. Same thing with the shoulder line. I can't let my partner pass my shoulder line and just fight from this position for 30 seconds at a time. When she goes to start passing me, I can't just stay here. Okay? This is no good. I have to always put my partner back in front of me and create some kind of contact with her. Or now from here, we can start going into all of our follow-up attacks on our partner. Okay? So we're always looking to keep our partner in front of us with some points of contact where we can limit movement and create kazushi, some kind of off-balancing effect to go into our attacks. Okay, so we can not only retain guard, but go into counter offense. And we can make sure that we never allow our partner to walk past our hip or our shoulder line for any extended amount of time. This is when our partner is loose passing. Okay. If the example remains the same, she's loose passing and she's down with a straight hamstring and she's looking to float over me like so. Again, I'm always looking to keep points of contact with my partner like so that from here I can look to pommel my legs inside and look to play games from here. I never let my partner top pommel, for example, and now I never let her knee slide across, get past my hip line, and now from here I can't just let her settle down and look to start passing me or pop up to her feet and start walking beyond my shoulder line. I always have to make sure that I can put her back in front of me and look to start going into recoveries and then counterattacks. Right? So my partner's loose passing. I always want to make sure that I keep as many points of contact as I can to limit movement. I never let her consistently outflank me side to side and put me in a situation where I'm purely in a defensive cycle and she's just in an offensive cycle running side to side, past my hip lines, past my shoulder lines, and looking to keep me under constant pressure. So now, the most important thing when your partner's tight passing is to never let them control your head and your shoulders. Okay? Now, let's take a look back at the match that I had with Hamala Bahal at 2017 ADCC. All right? When I talk about passing someone's guard, what I think about a guard pass and what most people look at as a guard pass are two separate things. When I'm talking about passing someone's guard, I'm talking about being in a position where I get past their legs and I'm in a situation where I can expose limbs and eventually go into a submission. Okay? What's the point of passing someone's guard if you can't submit them? All right? The entire goal of our sport is to be able to submit your opponent. Okay? If you can't expose a limb once you pass your partner's guard, you can never submit them. Okay? When I passed Hamalo in 2017 ADCC, yes, I technically passed his guard, and if there was points, it would have scored. Okay? But I failed to control his head and shoulders, meaning that there was no chance I could submit him. So if you look at, I passed him with a body lock, and we got into a situation like so. Hamalo had his elbows inside so tight, and he's framing on my head, where yes, technically I'm past his legs, or perpendicular, I'm past his guard. If this was any kind of tournament, yes, I would have scored my passing points. I would have scored 3. But I couldn't attack him from here. All right? There's no limb exposure. There's no control of the head and shoulders. So the second I was going to unlock my hands and move towards his head, okay, I didn't have the technology, I didn't have the knowledge to pommel inside from here, but if I just went to reach for his head, for example, he would just bring everything inside and regard right away. Okay? So technically, yes, it was a guard pass, but I couldn't create any submission danger because I didn't have control of his head. Okay, if I passed him with a top-headed arm, for example, where I had the upper body inside position, where now I had real control of him. Now I can start going in. I'm looking to start controlling limbs and start going in for submissions. Okay, so as the bottom person, your entire goal when someone is tight passing is to never allow them to control your head and your shoulders. Okay, if you can do that, you're going to be safe. And even if they do pass your legs and pass your guard, you can easily recover, and they can never threaten you with submissions. Okay, so if your partner's tight passing, she goes body lock, for example. All right, now, even if she passes your guard and you have hands inside, go ahead. Yes, she's passed your legs. But the second she goes to start submitting me and doing any real work from here, and she unlocks her hands, I can always bring everything inside. And the only danger you start running into is when your partner passes your guard and she gets control of your head and shoulders. Okay? Where now from here, as she goes to start, as she's tight passing, now she has control of my head and shoulders. Now, not only is my guard passed, but she has real control over me, and she can start to go in and work for submissions. Okay? This is no good. So when your partner's tight passing, your goals switch over from a loose passing situation to a tight passing situation where now you're looking to make so your partner cannot control your head. Okay? These will unify into one coherent series when you're sparring live. So for example, when your partner's standing over you and she goes to start loose passing, she throws your legs by, she goes into a Toriando. Okay? Right now, my goals are that of loose passing. I'm looking to put my partner back in front of me and make contact with her. But if she drops down to her knees, now from here I have a completely different set of goals. My entire goal from here is to not allow my partner to control my head. Okay, as she goes to start passing me and controlling my head, yes, she gets past my legs. But when she goes to pass my guard, I can always bring my legs back inside and bring my feet and my knees to point towards my partner. Okay, the commonality, loose passing versus tight passing, is that you're always trying to get your knees and your feet to point towards your partner. If your knees and your feet point towards your partner, she's never going to pass your guard. Okay, so you look at a loose passing situation where she starts, or maybe she's leg pommeling. She goes into a loose passing situation, she pommels on top, and now as she goes to bring my knee through, now she moves into a tight passing situation. If she can get to an underhook and a crossface, and she can control my head and my shoulders, now she's going to beat me from here. But if she goes from a loose passing situation, back in, and she gets past my legs, and now she switches to a tight passing situation as she goes to pass me. When she goes to control my head and shoulders, if I stop her from doing that with various frames and posts, now she goes to control my head and shoulders and pass me, I can bring my leg back inside and look to recover. If she goes to start loose passing me, for example, I bring my legs back inside and she drops into a half guard quickly and goes to start passing me from here, I have to make sure that my partner can't control my head and my shoulders. So now she goes to start passing me. I always look to free my head and my shoulders and go into recoveries and counterattacks. Okay, so these will unify in live sparring. And you have to be able to make a distinction between what your goals are when your partner is loose passing and what your goals are when your partner is tight passing. Now, these can change in a split second. Right now, I'm in a situation where I'm loose passing. So she wants to make sure I get back in front of her and form some kind of contact. Whereas now, I go in, I'm loose passing. Now I drop into a situation where I'm tight passing. Now, she's not looking to create contact and put me back in front of her just yet. Her initial goal switches from the loose passing goals to now addressing the tight passing goals. Where now, if I can control her head and shoulders, she's going to be beat from here. But if she can stop me from controlling her head and shoulders, she's always going to be able to bring those knees back in, recover, and now sit forward and move into a situation where she can recover and go into her counterattacks. Okay? If you cannot control your partner's head and shoulders, yes, you can pass their guard, but you can't do anything with it. Okay? When I'm talking about a guard pass, I'm talking about a situation where you're past your partner's legs and you have some kind of upper body inside position where you can actually expose a limb, do work, and get to a submission. Okay? If you can't do that, there's no reason you're even passing. Okay. So looking at our goals, we have a set of loose passing goals where you're always making sure that you have points of contact with your partner, where you're limiting movement and creating kazushi. Never letting them step past the hip or the shoulder line, and if they do, making sure that you can put your partner back in front of you. Okay? When they're tight passing, you have to make sure that they never control your head and shoulders. Okay? And you're always looking to bring your feet and your knees into a situation where they point towards your partner so that they can't pass your guard. Okay? And as always, these are always going to change rapidly with someone who's moving quickly side to side or forwards and backwards. Okay? 1 minute they're loose passing, next minute they're tight passing. 1 minute they're tight passing, next minute they pop up and they're loose passing. Okay? You can also, we looked at going from loose passing to tight passing. There's no reason why I can't go from tight passing, where I'm trying to control the head and the shoulders, to loose passing, where I pop up and now I'm loose passing from here. I'm looking to step past my partner's hip line. Now she's looking to put me back in front of her. Okay? So these are dynamic situations, and they're going to be changing all the time. All right? The onus is on you as the bottom player to recognize what your partner is doing, loose passing versus tight passing, and recognizing what goals you're trying to achieve to go into your offensive cycle. Now, as solid as guard passing is, there's one chink in the armor of passing, and that is, in order to pass your partner's guard, you at some point need to control their head and their shoulders. Okay? There's a huge difference between getting past your partner's legs and getting past your partner's, and actually passing your partner's guard. Okay? This is where I'm going back and talking about the reference to the Hamelo match. Yes, I got past his legs. Technically, I passed his guard, but I didn't really pass his guard because I didn't control the head and the shoulders. Okay? If I'm here, yes, technically I passed his guard, but I'm not really past his guard, because the second I go to do anything to work towards a submission or try to mount him or do anything from here, you just bring everything inside because there's no actual control of the head and shoulders. So if you look at any guard pass, I need to control my partner's head and shoulders to actually get past their guard. Okay? And she knows this. So she just has one common goal in mind of, okay, if my partner gets past my legs, never letting them control the head and the shoulders, it's going to be hard for me to pass. Okay? If she's in half guard, for example, I can never control her head and shoulders, it's going to be hard for me to pass. If I knee slide, I get through here, but I can't control her head and shoulders, how am I supposed to pass? I can't. Okay? So if you have a person on bottom who's very good at retaining guard, whether they're thinking about it or not, in their mind they know, I cannot let the top player control my head and shoulders. Okay? Otherwise I can get my guard passed. I can pass the legs all I want. You see this thousands of times in every competition, in every training session. Your partner or the top player gets past the legs, but then they don't actually get past the guard. They get past the legs, they try to drop down and get past the guard, and then they can't control the head, the legs come back in, and the bottom player recovers. Okay, you see it all the time. So this is the one disadvantage of being a top player, is I have to control my partner's head and shoulders, and the bottom player knows this. Okay? There is one exception to this rule. Right? That exception is north-south passing. Okay? If the top player can move into a situation where they're past the hip line and past the shoulder line, and they're passing to north-south. North-south is the one position, this is why you see most high-level guard passes coming from north-south. Okay? If you want to pass a high-level guard player, you pass them to north-south. Why? Because you don't have to control the head and shoulders. This is the one exception to the rule where if I pass to north-south, all I have to do is beat my partner's elbows and knees. There's no control of the head and shoulders from here. So now, when she goes to recover, yes, I don't have control of the head and shoulders, but I do have control of my partner's hips. And I'm past her guard. And even if she has elbows inside, I can still start to do real work from here, where I can come forwards, look to expose my partner's limbs, and go into attacks. Okay? So, knowing this from bottom position, you have to make sure, that's why I stressed so much before when your partner's loose passing, you can never allow your partner to camp past your hip line, or especially past your shoulder line. Okay? If she's on top and she's passing, I know if she's in front of me or even side on and she's perpendicular, as long as she doesn't control my head, she'll never pass my guard. Okay? She can do all she wants. She can get close, she can drop down to side control, and she can get here. When she actually goes to do anything, to work for a submission or move around, I can always bring my leg back inside, because she doesn't have control of my head. But if she moves north-south, and she beats my elbows and she beats my knees, now she doesn't need control of my head. She's going to pass me to north-south, and even though she's not controlling my head, I'm going to get beat from here. Okay? So this is why it's so important to make sure that you keep your partner in front of you and you never let them get beyond the shoulder line and stay there for any amount of time. Okay? Your goal, your main issue when your partner's in front of you or side on is controlling the head. She's in half guard. When she goes to control the head, I don't let her. When she goes to pass my guard, she can't. She can always bring everything back inside. If she outflanks me, she goes to drop down and control the head. As long as I don't allow my partner to control my head, I'm never going to get my guard passed. But the second she moves past the shoulder line, the game changes now. Okay? So it's your job from bottom position to make sure that your partner's loose passing, and the only way she's going to pass you to north-south is loose passing. She's not going to be passing tight and pass to north-south. You have to make sure that you can constantly put your partner back in front of you and create some kind of connection to go into counterattacks. Okay, this is so, so important. Okay, so understanding from bottom position, when your partner's loose passing, your key to retention is ultimately not allowing your partner to control your head and your shoulders, and never allowing your partner to get past the hip line and especially the shoulder line. Okay, if you look at any guard pass, it always ends chest to chest with control of head and the shoulders. Okay, if you cannot control the head and the shoulders, you cannot pass someone's guard. So as the bottom player, you know this. Okay, the only exception to this is north-south. All right, this is super important, and the whole entire instructional is based around this simple idea. Never let your partner control your head and your shoulders. Always keep them in front of you, or worst case scenario, perpendicular. Never allow them to be past the shoulder line where they don't have to control your head but can still pass your guard. This is super, super important. All right, so just as we spoke about in the passing series, we're going to speak about it here as well. Guard passing and guard retention. It's a simple battle for inside position, okay? And there's no other way around it. If I can win the battle for inside position, my partner's never going to pass my guard. And if the top player can win the battle for inside position, they're going to get past the guard, okay? So let's take a look at this. If I'm sometime like so, my partner can start with outside passing or with inside passing. If she starts with inside passing, she brings her foot inside my legs, she splits my legs, and she can start with inside passing. She can also start with outside passing, where she outflanks me, where now her legs have the outside position, and she can start with the flank. But at some point, she has to drop down and win the battle for inside position, meaning she has to get her limbs inside mine. If my limbs stay inside hers, there's no way she's ever going to pass me. So if she goes to drop down and I go inside bicep like so. Now she goes to come in, I go inside shoulder like so. Now my left elbow comes inside shoulder like so. And now as she goes to start passing me from here, when she goes to control my head, I can always guide my partner over and look to start creating space to go into counterattacks. If on the other hand, she drops down, she outflanks me, she drops down, and now from here she has the elbow and hand inside my left arm. She has her knee inside of my hip. She has her hip inside my elbow. She has her jaw inside of my shoulder. And she has a strong crossface, and she wins the battle for inside position. Now when I go to recover, it's going to be useless. Okay? So if she can win the battle for inside position, she's going to pass my guard. If I can win the battle for inside position, she will never pass my guard. Okay? It's the same thing when passing to north-south. If I can win the battle for inside position by creating frames and a connection of the knees and the elbows, she will never pass my guard. When she goes to come in, she can put all of her weight on me, she can do everything she wants. She will never pass my guard from here because I have the inside position. But the second her shoulders and collarbones come inside my elbows and inside my knees, now she's winning the battle for inside position, and she's beating me from here. From a half guard situation, she has one leg inside. Okay, so she goes inside first. If I win the battle for inside position, if I have a butterfly hook, for example, and I have my hands and my legs inside when she goes to pass me, she will never win this battle for passing because I had the inside position. But if she wins the battle for upper body inside position, for example, then she wins the battle for lower body inside position, and now she goes to pass me. She has all the inside position advantages, and she can easily get past my legs with the inside real estate. Okay? So you have to understand, now everything's starting to come full circle, that passing is just the battle for inside position. So if you actually take a look at this, and we just do 10 to 20 seconds of guard passing, you'll see everything we talked about up until now being applied here. So if she just goes to pass my guard, you're going to notice I'm always looking to put her in front of me and create Kazushi. I'm always looking to be in an offensive cycle where I go into counterattack as she goes to pass me. I'm never letting her step past my hip line, past my shoulder line. I'm never letting her control my head. I'm never allowing her to win the battle for inside position. You see all of these concepts being used just with different gripping variations. Okay, but if you follow these goals, your partner can never pass you. So as she goes to start passing me, go ahead. You see, every time she goes to outflank me, I'm always putting her back in front of me. I'm never letting her control my head. I'm always making contact. I'm always making sticky grips. I'm always looking to go into off balances. And you see, everything we looked at is mapped out right here in front of you. You just need to be able to understand them and understand the changes in what your goals are as they approach you. Okay, everything's happening very quickly. So the biggest problem for you as a viewer is going to be recognizing what situation you're in and what goals you're chasing. Okay, but the second you can understand that, everything becomes much easier, and then it's just a matter of applying different grips here versus there in certain given situations. All right, but if you think about it, we can actually do a half guard one as well. If you think about it, all the concepts remain the same. Okay, you see from half guard, my whole thing with retention and counterattack is to fight my way back to the inside position. Right now, she's stolen the upper body inside position. So as she goes to pass, she needs to win the battle for lower body inside position, and then she needs to pass me. What I need to do is I need to win the battle for lower body and upper body inside position so I can get into a situation where I can go into counterattacks. So as she goes to pass me, I just incrementally fight my way back to inside position. I never let her control my head and my shoulders for an extended amount of time, and then I go into my recoveries. Okay? So when you think about it like this, it's very simple, but it's not easy. Okay? The hard part is having the skills and the knowledge to recognize these pieces as they're being applied, and then acting accordingly. Right? But if you look at it like this, everything is pretty simple. It just takes time to get good at it. All right, I've spoken about this a million times, but we're going to go over it again because it's super important. The importance of having concave shoulders, all right, when we're retaining guard and going into counterattacks. All right, when my partner's standing above me, like so, if I have my shoulders flat on the ground, it makes it harder for her to move my body. Okay, so if she goes to Toriando, she won't get a spinning effect where she rotates me maybe all the way to north-south, for example. But it'll also make it incredibly hard for me to follow her. If I bring my legs and arms into a situation like so, if she puts her hands on my legs and she puts her hand on my knee, she can spin me pretty easily from here. Okay? If she tries to do that from here, there's so much friction on the mat that she won't be able to move me. But when she goes to outflank me, if I keep everything flat on the floor, it'll be incredibly hard for me to follow her from here. Whereas if I have concave shoulders, I can look to start moving my body into a situation where I can rock from side to side, forwards and backwards, and I can follow my partner. Okay? If she's in front of me, and I try to follow my partner from here, I'm just moving my legs. Like so. This is no good. When she goes to move to a side, I need to be able to follow her with concave shoulders. Right? Concave shoulders, when I roll my shoulders forwards and my back forms this banana shape, this is what allows me to follow my partners forwards and backwards and side to side. So she picks a side, I can quickly move to that side to cover and make connection. She moves to the other side, I can quickly move to that other side and form connection. She walks past my shoulder line, I can quickly bring my body back, and I can form connections. I can invert and I can easily move myself around. Right, so it's important that when your partner's passing, we have this concave shoulder situation where I can easily follow my partner from side to side. This applies as well in a seated situation. What I don't want is for my shoulders to be like so, and my elbows to be wide, my partner can just punch in underhooks and start going into attacks from here. I want everything to be in a situation like so. Where now she goes to punch in underhooks, it's hard, there's less surface area for her to start moving in. If she does get an underhook, for example, now I'm in a concave position, so as she goes to start coming forwards into me, I can look to go into counterattacks and look to start moving my partner around and off balancing and going into all of my follow-ups. Okay, so it's super important to have to understand that when your partner goes to pass you, you have to be able to follow them, and the only way that you can do that is by having concave shoulders like so. That's why everyone in jiu-jitsu has such bad posture, because they're used to doing this all the time. It's the same thing from a half-guard situation where your partner's passing you. If I go to clear my partner's cross face, like so, and I look to escape from here, even if I have a butterfly hook in place, if my shoulders are flat on the floor, I can never move my partner from here. Okay, flat convex shoulders make it hard for you to move on the floor. Concave, rounded shoulders make it very easy for you to move on the floor. So when your partner goes to cross face you and keep control of you from here, like concave shoulders, everything becomes easy. Every escape you're going to do, and retention is the beginnings of an escape, you all need concave shoulders. If she has a cross face and she's looking to flatten me out, I go to kip, kip, kip. You notice my shoulders are rolling forward from here. I'm never like this. This is no good. Whenever your partner's trying to pass you, you notice with any pass she does, well, I always have concave shoulders. I can always move and follow my partner along the mat very, 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 very easily. Okay, that's super important when you're playing bottom position to always have the ability to roll your shoulders forward so you can move easily along the mat. Okay, because ultimately, if she's standing over me, it's going to be hard for me to match her movement. Or I can do a little bit better when I roll the shoulders forward. I can follow her much better side to side and forwards and backwards. Let's talk about how we can hide our jaws from a cross face. Just as strikers hide their jaws from punches, like so, we need to be able to hide our jaws from cross faces. Right? Now, what does this mean? Like we spoke about, every guard pass besides passes to north-south involve your partner controlling your head and your shoulders. So if you raise your head and expose your jaw to a cross face, it's going to be really easy for your partner to control your head, provided they can get close to you. So if my partner's passing me, my partner's passing me on this side, she outflanks me, and she drops down to a situation where now she can control my head, and she can get a clean bite on my jaw of the cross face, it's going to be hard for me to escape from here. Because now, as she goes to lock her hand, even if she has, when she locks her hand, now as I go to escape from here, my jaw gets caught under on my partner's cross face here. So now, as I go to escape, I feel like I'm pushing my partner onto me, and you're making the cross face tighter when you got to move around. Okay, even if I have a hand inside, for example, you see from here when she goes to cross face me, my hand basically gets stuck inside, and even though I have the inside position, it's hard because I'm not hiding my jaw from the crossface at all. But if you contrast this with the situation where I hide my jaw from the crossface, now when she goes to start to put pressure on me, I can clear the crossface off and look to bring everything back inside. So you have to be able to tuck your jaw inside your shoulders and hide your jaw from the crossface. So your partner can't get a strong purchase on the crossface. If I'm just here and I have convex shoulders and open shoulders, and there's space between my jawline and my shoulder, you're always going to be exposed for heavy crossfaces on both sides. The best example of this is from a half guard. You see people get caught in half guard and you're like, I can't move from here. Yes, because your shoulders are flat, number one, and number two, your partner has a very strong crossface. If you see from here, you see my partner has a great bite on this entire side of my face with the crossface. Okay, my jaw is completely exposed to the crossface. So now, when I gotta move my partner around, it feels hard. If I try to off balance my partner to my left, I just push her shoulder into my own face, and you feel like it just gets tighter. But when I hide my jaw from the crossface, and I tuck my jaw inside my own shoulder, and I look down towards my partner's collarbones, now, when she goes to give me a strong crossface, her shoulder slides along my face and off my jaw. Here, it just pushes in under my jaw. She has the inside position with the shoulder. And now, as I go to push, I just push her up into my jaw, and into my face, and into my neck. This is no good. Whereas when I hide the jaw from the crossface, now her shoulder glides along my face and up off the top of my head. So when she goes to hold me from here, the crossface always comes off. If she holds as tight as she can from here, and she has good exposure with the crossface, there's no way I'm ever going to move her anywhere. If she holds as tight as she can, and I have the crossface, my jaw hidden when she goes to hold me, she slides off every time. Okay? So, why is this important? Because your partner's entire goal is to control your head and your shoulders. So if she gets close to me, she gets close to a guard pass, she's always going to have to go from loose passing to tight passing. If she can't control my head and my shoulders, and she can't get a strong purchase on a crossface, she's never going to pass me. All right, so as she goes to start passing me, I'm always hiding my jaw from that crossface. Okay, you see there's a big difference from here. My hands are in the same position, and she puts a strong crossface where her bicep makes contact underneath my jaw now. There's a huge difference from this and this. Now when she goes to crossface me, I can always clear the crossface, and I can always bring everything back inside. Okay? So you have to have concave shoulders with an ability to hide your jaw from strong crossfaces. This is super important again. All right, so we're going to look at seated versus loose passing when someone's standing above me. Now, a lot of this is going to look familiar because we went over this in depth in the seated guard instructional. But nonetheless, this is a very important aspect of guard retention. Okay? Because ultimately, if you're seated, someone's in front of you, they can't control your head, and your feet are pointing right towards them. So if you can stay seated and you just want to retain guard, there's no way anyone could ever pass your guard without actually flattening you out first. So just strictly guard retention, not even talking about attacks. If you just don't want anyone to pass your guard, just stay seated. Now, it's of course hard to stay seated against a talented opponent. They're splitting the legs, they're outflanking you, they're pushing your shoulders, they're lifting your ankles. But if you just want to not get your guard passed, just stay seated, because it ensures that your feet will always point towards your partner, and it will ensure that your partner can never control your head and shoulders and pin them on the floor. Okay, so we're going to look at an overview now of what we're going to be looking at. Our partner's going to be standing up in front of us. Okay, and again, if your partner tries to control your head from here, you can always clear the grips. If she goes to punch an underhook from here, she's so far away that I can always pommel hands back inside. And the whole time my feet are always pointing right towards my partner. So I just want to stay seated, and as she gets to start passing my guard from here, the first thing she has to do is either outflank me, which we'll look at that, split my legs, which we'll look at that, or put my back on the floor. So there's prerequisites that she has to think about before she can even think about passing. She has to do one of those things: split my legs, outflank me, or put my back on the floor. And if you can just stay seated, there's no way anyone can actually pass your guard. Okay. So now, a general overview of what we're going to be looking at is, number one, how to keep legs inside. Okay. Ultimately, what we want when we're working in a seated guard is to have my feet inside of her legs, where we can start going into various off balances, various attacks into my partner's legs, and things like that. Okay, so how can I keep two of my legs inside of my partner's? Again, always looking for constant contact, because it is her standing and I'm grounded. We're always looking to get some kind of contact with my partner and look to start going in and off balancing and getting into all of our attacks. So how can I keep two legs inside against a talented opponent so she can't even begin to start passing me? All right. Then we're going to look at when our partner steps a leg inside or attempts to step a leg inside, how can I pommel my feet back to the inside position? So as she's going to step, I can start blocking her and then looking to pommel inside. If she does step inside, how can I recover and bring my legs back to the inside position? Okay. If my partner starts to flank me, what can I look to start doing? So let's say we're seated here, now my partner goes to start flanking me. How can I look to recover and look to go into a situation where I always can make contact with my partner? I'm seated, she can't control my head and my shoulders, and I can keep my feet pointing towards her, we can start to go into attacks. Okay, so we're going to look at how can we initially keep our feet inside, looking at different stances and how we can make contact with our partner. How can we recover the inside position when she steps inside? Okay, because every movement that she makes where she splits my legs or outflanks me, she's getting closer and closer to a guard pass. Okay, so if I can keep her in front of me with contact and my feet inside, she can never pass me from here. Just go try to pass me. She'll never pass me if I have this position here. She has to pommel a foot inside. She has to outflank me. She has to put my shoulders on the floor. She has to do something before she can start to pass me. So strictly talking about retention, staying seated is one of the best options. So we're going to look at keeping feet inside, recovering the inside position, and what we do when our partner starts flanking us and putting us on our back like so. How can we recover to a seated position? Right, because ultimately, if she goes to flank me here, and I fall down to not create back exposure, now she's past my hip line. This is no good. Okay, so strictly talking about retention and going into counterattacks, what can we do from a seated position to stop our partner just blowing past our legs or putting us on our back and starting to work for passes from there? All right, so when you're in a situation where you're seated versus a standing opponent, but there's always an important question that we should be asking ourselves. All right, we're going to do questions like this for each subdivision of each subsection of our instructional today. All right, every time we move to a different section, we're going to have an important question that we're going to be thinking about while we're in this certain given position. All right, the question you should be asking yourself when you have someone standing in front of you when you're seated, when you're talking about not only retention, but retention and attacking, because they're one and the same. Okay? You can't just retain guard. You have to not get your guard passed, but also attack your partner. So the question you should be asking yourself is, how can I keep my partner directly in front of me and ultimately get my 2 feet inside of her legs before she splits my legs, outflanks me, or puts my back on the floor? Okay, because ultimately those are her goals. She wants to split my legs, outflank me, or put my back on the floor. If she splits my legs, she can put my back on the floor, or she can enter into my legs or submissions. If she outflanks me, she can create back exposure, or I have to forcibly put my back on the floor to not get my back taken. Or if she just lifts my ankles and puts my back on the floor, then she can start passing. So as far as retention purposes, my questions are, how can I create constant kazushi from here, keeping my partner in front of me, creating contact with my partner, and ultimately get my 2 feet inside of my partner's legs? Because everything you do from a seated guard is going to be Ashigarami X guard based. Okay, you saw, obviously everyone from our team do it. You saw Marcel do it. His whole goal is always to get 2 feet inside of his partner's legs. Okay, so that's the main thing that we should be asking ourselves when we're seated versus standing and our partner's loose passing us. Okay, now if she moves to a tight passing situation, it changes. Okay, now if she drops down and goes into a body lock, now my whole thing is how can I off balance and keep my partner from controlling my head, forcing me into a half guard, things like that. And we'll talk about that later. But when you're talking about just seated versus standing, it's always, how can I keep this person in front of me with my feet pointing towards them? And ultimately, how can I get my 2 feet inside of my partner's knees and dominate the space between her knees before she splits my legs, outflanks me, and puts my back on the floor? Okay? And if you can just think about this simple question and come up with answers through certain techniques, everything will become much easier. Again, this is going to look a little familiar because we went over it in seated guard, but as far as retention goes, it's very important that we look at what stances we play versus what stances our partner plays. Okay, what we can't have is a situation where I'm seated square, my partner has staggered legs, and then she just shoots past my guard, she outflanks me, the next thing you know, I'm getting my guard passed. Okay, this is a retention series, so we have to be able to stop that initially to create contact and get our feet inside. Okay, so let's look at stances. My partner can play with one of 3 stances, and she can play these interchangeably. She can go right lead forward, she can go left lead forward, or she can go square, like so. Okay, or obviously she can drop to her knees, but then we're tight passing. Right, when she's standing, she can play with one of these 3 stances. There's no reason, okay, and you see it all the time at the highest levels. I'm going to stress this again. There's absolutely no reason for the top player to be playing with a square stance like this. It doesn't make any sense. All right, you don't see wrestlers ever standing in a square stance for long amounts of time. You don't. I mean, you can do it. You can move to a square stance and then move back to a staggered stance. You see strikers do this a lot, where guys square their stance to throw punches and then move back to a staggered stance. But you should always be in a situation where you're staggered, so you can move quickly and you can start to flank people to given sides. Okay. And in addition, you deny me center line exposure from going into attacks. When she's square, like so, now she can only move quickly from side to side, but she can't move diagonally past my hip line like so. She has to stagger her legs. If she goes to take a cross step, she has to move into a stagger stance anyway. Okay, so you're just giving yourself that extra step that you have to do if you start square. So when she's in a square stance, number one, it doesn't give her the ability to outflank me and move in the direction that she wants. She can only move quickly in this direction along that plane, but she can't move past my hip line. And she creates a situation where there's a massive amount of center line exposure from here. So it's very easy for me to off balance and go into my attacks and start to hit kazushis, where now she has to step out to avoid that, and now it allows me to get connection to my partner's lead leg. Okay. The idea behind this is people are afraid of leg locks, so they think, okay, if I stand with both my legs far away, the opponent won't be able to enter into the legs. That's not true though. Sure, I can't get direct contact right away, but when she's doing this and posting my shoulders, how is she going to pass me from here? She can't outflank me. She can't split my legs. If she goes to step inside, she has to stagger her stance first. Okay, so all this does is it gives me the ability to start grip fighting and patting hands down and then going in and harassing my partner's feet, okay, with how she wazes. All right, so your partner can stand square, but it's never the best option long term, okay? This is the same reason, like I said, you don't see wrestlers standing square. They create center line exposure so you can shoot on them. You don't see strikers standing square because they create center line exposure and you can hit them in the face. Okay, the whole thing is to hide the center line, hide the jaw, so that now, when I want to go double quiche, I can't. Yes, I can make contact, but she should have options to pommel her legs back inside and start passing from here. This is basically just a negative game that people use to stall. They post their shoulders, I go to reach for the legs, I can't get there, and then we run into situations like so. But if you know how to harass the feet properly, this is terrible for the top partner to do. So don't pass like this, okay? Now, if she's square, I can stay square. But if she staggers her stance and she goes right lead forward, for example, now I have to stagger my stance because now she can move quickly to a flank position, take a cross step, and this is no good for me. So what I can't have is a situation where I'm here and she's right in front of me, and now she just quickly shoots past my legs and she's gone. So when she goes right lead forward, I have to go right lead forward as well. So she's right leg forward, my right hip is down, and my right leg monitors her lead leg. So now when she goes to step, I can always block her and come forward and make contact. So she goes to step. Now I have contact with my partner where we can go in and start to go into our follow-up attacks. In addition, when she goes staggered and I go staggered, it only allows her to pass in one direction. Okay? So when she goes to outflank me in this direction, I know this is the only way that she can go. Because my partner steps out in this direction, Now she exposes her center line, where we can go and start to attack with off balances. So if she goes staggered like so, and I stay square, she can outflank me in this direction, like so. Or she can come in and start stepping out in this direction where she steps across, like so, and then this like follows and actually starts to move to a flank position like so. And now there's no center line exposure. If I try to go in double quiche, I can't. So she can go 1, 2, and now she can start outflanking me. She can drop down. She can go to my knee and my hip, and she can start to push my legs away and my knees point away, and turns into a disaster. Okay? So when she starts to move staggered, like so, she goes right lead forward, I go right lead forward. So now I cut her off. She can only go in one direction. If she goes in this direction, she exposes her center line. If she tries to go in this direction, now I can always follow her. Okay? So if she goes staggered, I have to go staggered. So my lead leg monitors her lead leg. If she switches to a left lead forward, I have to switch to a left lead forward. Right now, from here we go in, and our lead leg monitors our partner's lead leg. If she goes left lead forward, and I stay right lead forward, now there's no reason why she can't just outflank me with the cross step, and she beats me here. Okay? So you have to understand, in order to not just get your guard pass right away, you have to recognize what stances your partner's playing. Is she square? I can play square. Okay, this is. I can also play staggered. There's no reason why I can't play staggered as well. I can play square because I know that my partner can't move quickly in the direction she needs to. She can only go side to side along that plane, like along that axis out there. She can't step diagonally without staggering her stance. The second she goes staggered, I have to realize this, and I stagger as well. So now, when she goes to outflank me, I can easily follow my partner, and I know which side she has to pass to. If she switches stances, this is no good, because now she can outflank me here easily, and I get beat. So if she switches from right to left lead forward, right to left, I have to switch from right hip to left hip, and we can go in and start playing with our partner here. Okay, and now if she switches again, as she goes to outflank me, I have to switch, and I move from one hip to the other, and we can adjust accordingly. Okay, this is like an hour-long portion in the seated versus standing. I'm not going to go into the full explanation, but this is super important for not having someone just run past your legs. Okay, if you're seated and you have someone standing in front of you, and we're here, you have to recognize if your partner changes stances. If I go here and she goes right lead forward and I go to the wrong side, now as far as retention goes, she outflanks me, and now if I fall to my back, she takes a big cross step. I fall here, and now you get your guard pass, and you're like, okay, I tried to play seated guard. You said it was the best for retention, but people are just shooting past my leg. This is not okay. Okay, so understand that when your partner adjusts his stances, we also have to look at that and adjust accordingly. If your partner's square, you can play staggered or square on either side. Staggered on either side or square. If your partner's right lead forward, you have to go right lead forward. And if you're left lead forward, if your partner's left lead forward, you have to switch left lead forward. So that you force your partner to pass to one side, and you can adjust accordingly, and you can start to go in, create kazushi, make contact, and then go into your attacks. So you're not just retaining, you're also going to attacks as well. All right, so just so you need to understand that the stances matter, the distance also matters. Okay, again, what we can't have is our partner just shooting past our legs, passing our guard, and we lose the battle right from the beginning. All right, and like I said, I talked about this entire, what I'm talking about right now, way more in depth in the seated guard. So I'm kind of just brushing over it now because I know many of you who have retention have seated guard, but some of you won't. So I'm talking about it a little bit here, but if I went into as much depth with this stuff as I did in seated guard, we'd have 3 hours right here, and then it would be a 30-hour long instructional. But this stuff is all in the seated guard. I talk about it in depth. Right, but it's important for attention purposes as well. So if I have a partner standing over me, I have to understand that there are three distances my partner can work at. Okay, she can work in a situation where she's so far away from me, where it takes her multiple steps to come towards me, and I have time to react to what her movements are going to be. You have to remember your partner's standing and you're grounded. standing and you're grounded. So she can move much more quickly than I can. So if she's far enough away where now as she goes to move towards me, I can adjust and I can come in and I can start making contact with my partner. Okay, so she's so far away where it takes her multiple steps to come in, and as she goes to come towards me, I can react accordingly and hit my follow-up moves. The second is where she's so close to me where I can immediately come in and make contact and start to limit movement. Okay, where now, even though she's standing, she's not faster than me because I have connection to her, and now we can start to go into a follow-up attacks from here. And third is in this kind of gray area. This is the situation where we don't want to be, where my partner's close enough to me to touch me, but she's far enough away where it's hard for me to really get grips on her. Okay, so we're in a situation where I can't really get to a strong connection. I can maybe grab the hands, maybe she's fighting, she pulls the hands away, maybe I gotta reach for the legs and they're just not there. Maybe I'm overextending and she jumps on a front headlock. This is no good. Okay, so she's in a kind of gray area where it's hard for me to make contact with her, but just at the drop of a dime, she can just push my shoulders and quickly outflank me and start to give me issues from here. Okay, this is no good. So I always want to be in one of the first two situations where she's so far away from me, where now she has to take multiple steps towards me, I can react accordingly, or she's close enough to me where now I can make contact and go into my follow-up attacks. Okay, and I can manage this distance with my movement. If I'm square, I can't move forwards and backwards quickly. But if I'm here, I can move forwards and backwards. So now my partner wants to be in this gray area, right? So she plays here. I can't really reach her, but she can shoot past my legs. I can move towards her. I can make contact. I can move away from her. And now as she goes to move towards me, I can move back in towards her. So I can dominate the distance between us with a simple staggered stance where I can move forwards and backwards, and I can move side to side. Okay? So I always want to be in a situation where she's so far away, where now I can read what she's going to do, and as she goes to move towards me, come in here. Now, I'm close enough where I can make contact and go to follow-up attacks. She always wants to be in a situation where she's in this gray area where I can't really touch her, but at any point, it's hard for me to react because she's so close where she can just shoot past my legs and start giving me problems. Okay? And I manage this by either moving towards my partner to make contact, or away from my partner, so that as she goes to follow me, I can meet here in the middle and now go into my follow-up attacks and connections. Okay? You have to understand, again, this is for just retention purposes. You can't just let your partner be in a situation where she's beating you on stances, you have no idea what stances are, you can't read the stances, and your partner's moving quickly from side to side, forwards and backwards, and she just shoots past your legs. Okay, what you can't have is a situation where you're square on bottom, and your partner's here, they're doing behind stuff, and they're moving. You gotta make grips on them, they're stripping grips, you gotta grab the legs, they can't grab their grip, and then they just shoot past your legs, and you don't even have a chance to start your retention series because your guard's passed right away. Okay, so just understand seated versus loose passing. You have to understand what stances your partner's playing and what distance they're playing at. All right, and if you can start to read this and adjust accordingly, you can start to go into kazushis and then off balances and eventually your own attacks. All right, and again, I talked about this for hours on the seated instructional, but we're just breezing over it right now because it is important for retention purposes. All right, let's talk a little bit about the grip fighting battle, okay? Because again, the winner of this exchange, seated versus loose passing, is all going to stem from the initial grip fighting battle. Okay, if she's seated like so, if I can dominate the grip fighting battle, starting at the head, the hands, and the ankles, I'm going to win. I'm going to achieve my goals, splitting the legs, outflanking her, or putting her on her back. Okay, if I start playing at the head and playing at the wrist, I start playing here, I start feinting with the lead leg, I can step inside and I can achieve that goal of splitting the legs. If I come in here and she's not hand fighting adequately and we come through, we grab the ankles, we can put her back on the floor and start our passing, and now we're in the driver's seat. If she's standing square and from here we're grip fighting and I'm winning all the grip fighting exchange, I can start pulling the head, I can start coming in here, I can go to the knees, I can start outflanking my partner. Okay? So you have to understand that everything starts from the grip fighting exchanges. So if she's standing over me, and we're here, I'm always looking to make some kind of contact with my partner. What she wants, everything's gonna be moving quickly from here. So as I go to reach for her hands, she pulls the hands away. As I go to reach for the legs, she reaches the legs away. As I go to reach, she reaches over and she grabs a collar tie, she posts my shoulder, she starts moving me around, and now, again, she can move quickly from here. So you have to understand that as far as retention goes, you can't give your partner everything they want. You can't let them pull in the head, you can't let them shoot into underhooks. And then you have to also understand that at any time, they can switch from passing loosely to passing tight, all right? And this is where the real issue comes in. Because now, you're playing here, you're looking about grip fighting going into your attack, and then your partner shoots into an underhook, now she shoots into a body lock, and now you're forced into half guard, and now you're dealing with a whole different situation here. And you have to understand that this is a possibility, okay? So everything starts, retention-wise, with tight elbows, concave shoulders, with my shoulders in front of my hips, and my stance adjusting accordingly to my partner's stance. So if she's square, I play here. What I can't do is have elbows like this, okay? You see all the time, guys take underhooks and knee slide. You see body locks come into place. You saw it a million times last weekend when Nikki, or last weekend now, not when you're watching this, when Yuri competed against Nicky Rod, and he was playing here. Nicky Rod just locked his hands at will and body locks. Okay, you have to understand that they can go from loose to tight passing and then drop to the dime. Okay, so my whole thing is to be to win the grip fighting exchanges from here, create contact with my partner, and get my feet in between her knees. Okay, so as she gets to start grip fighting with me, what I can't have is a situation where she's pushing my shoulders behind my hips. Now she's splitting my legs and she's putting my back on the floor, and now she's starting to win this battle and get closer and closer to her guard passes. Okay, for just purely retention purposes, again, I want to stay seated. She can't control my head and my shoulders and pin them on the floor. And she can't achieve the goal that she wants. Okay, she has to put my back on the floor before she starts passing me. Okay, she can't get my feet to point away from her, and she can't control my head, my head and shoulders. So whenever she goes to start grip fighting with me, I'm always clearing grips and re-gripping. I'm always here, I'm always clearing grips, and now I come in and I start making contact with my partner. Okay, again, there's another hour on grip fighting in the seated versus or the seated guard instructional, but we're just brushing over here for retention. Okay, we can't be in a situation where she just dominates all the grips. Go ahead. She just dominates all the grips, and now she starts outflanking me and she beats me from here. The whole time she gets to start passing me and I'm seated. Go ahead. And now I have contact, and we can go into all of our follow-ups from there. So you have to understand what stance your partner's playing, the distance they're playing at, and you have to understand that everything that you're going to be doing stems from the grip fighting battle. If you can win the grip fighting exchanges, you're never going to get your guard passed, and you can be able to go into follow-up attacks. Okay, you can be in the driver's seat. But if your partner dominates the grip fighting exchanges, they're going to dominate the match. All right, so again, there's going to be a million different things that your partner can do from here, but we're going to look at keeping the inside foot position, recovering the inside foot position when your partner splits the legs, and then what can we do when our partner outflanks us. So let's look at some of the options when our partner goes to step the legs inside. How can we maintain the inside foot position? Okay, the first thing is if my partner's square, like so, I always want to be in a situation where I have the least amount of space possible between my knees open and my heels and my butt open. Okay, so what I don't want is a situation where I'm just like this. There's a lot of space between my knees, and there's a lot of space between my heels and my butt. There's a huge gap here for my partner to step inside. So I always want to play in a situation where if I'm square, I play like so. Okay, where now there's a relatively small amount of space between my heel and my butt, and at any point when my partner goes to step inside, I can close the space between my two knees. Okay, so now when my partner goes to step inside, it's very difficult from here. Okay, when I play staggered, I play with my lead leg monitoring my partner's lead foot, so at any point I can come into a situation where I bring my foot in like so. Okay, what I can't have is just a situation where I'm like this, my partner goes to step inside with maybe some grip fighting and she moves inside. Okay, so I can always keep my feet inside by playing like this. Okay, so now as my partner goes to step inside, You see I move in like so. So we play in a relaxed position. Now as my partner goes to step in, we can play here. As my partner goes to step in, we can play here. And I'm always taking away this space between my heels and my butt, my knees coming together. My partner wants to do is to split my legs. So the closer my knees are, the harder it'll be. The easier it will be for her to outflank me, but the harder it's going to be for her to split my two legs. And the same goes with heels to butt. The closer my heels are to my butt, the harder it's going to be for her to step inside. So when she goes to step inside, we play here. When she goes to step inside, we play here. We have some kind of contact. As long as I have space between her shoelaces and my butt, separated by a leg, I'm going to be in good position. So as she goes to step in, I block with one leg. As she goes to step in, I block with one leg. If we're staggered, as she goes to step in, I block with a foot. And I move in and I connect. As she goes to step in, I block with the leg. And I replace it with a second leg. And now I have 2 feet inside. Okay? So I'm always looking to maintain the inside foot position. There's a million ways you can do this. We looked at it in the seated guard instructional. All right? But when she initially goes to walk in, if I have the inside foot position, there's no way she can pass my guard. So talk about strictly retention, not even follow-up attacks. Maintain the inside foot position. So whenever she goes to step inside, when she goes to start her guard passing, she wants to either outflank me or she wants to step inside. When she goes to step inside, go ahead. Good. Move around a little bit. And you see, I always bring my feet. I always keep my feet inside, and I have sticky hooks. Okay. If she can't step her foot inside, there's going to be little she can do with guard passing from here. Okay. So these are some ways that you can keep your feet inside, but working with a thought in mind of always taking away the space between your heels and your butt and your 2 knees together. When your partner goes to step in, it's always we move from here, go ahead, to here. Now we're in close like so. Now we can break 2 feet inside. If we're square, when she goes to step in, we always go here. I never stay with splayed legs when she goes to step in. Because now if she pommels her foot over, she can step to a hamstring. Now she has legs inside. Even if she pommels over my legs, when she goes to step into the hamstring, it makes it hard. I can always pommel feet back to the inside. Okay? If my legs are splayed open and she beats this initial foot like so, she can come in and have space between. Now she goes to step in, I can always replace with one leg or the other. Or even if she does beat me because my knees are close together, I can always move to a given side and pommel legs inside like so before my partner shuffles me down. Okay? So I'm always closing the space between my heels and my butt and my 2 knees. Whenever she goes to step in, it's always here, 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 here. So I can always keep my 2 feet inside of my partner's knees. If you have 2 feet inside your partner's knees, you're going to be in the driver's seat because you have the inside position. She can't pass you, and you can start to go into follow-up attacks with any Ashigurami X-guard variations that you like. All right, let's talk about recovering the inside foot position when our partner steps to the inside. Okay, because again, when we're seated and she's standing, as far as just for tension purposes goes, if she steps a foot to the inside, she's closer to a pass. Okay, so our partner has a choice of stepping in 3 different positions. She can use her foot to step to a position where she has the inside foot and she's directly in the center. She can use her inside foot to step to a hamstring on either side with either a cross hamstring or straight hamstring. Okay, so talk about this. We spoke about this in the passing instructional. She can go directly in the center. She can go cross hamstring where she takes a cross step to my hamstring like so, or she can go straight across with a straight hamstring and she can step straight in. Okay, so again, many different options from here, but your goal is to recover the inside foot position, however you have to. All right. Some of the ways that we can do this: she steps inside, she goes right to the middle. Okay, this is something a naive person would do because now there's no reason why you can't pommel one leg back inside. So you're here, you can make initial contact, then you can pommel a second leg in, extract, and then you have 2 feet to the inside. She goes to step in, I can pommel a foot inside, now I have feet to the inside. All right? So if she goes right to the middle, okay, there's no reason why I can't just pommel back shin to shin, okay, because there's so much space between her leg, her shoelaces, and my butt from here. Okay, there's all this space where now I can easily just pommel a leg to the inside and make contact and go into my follow-up attacks. The issue starts to come when your partner starts stepping to one hamstring or the other. Okay, because now if she goes to step in to a straight hamstring, for example, now it's going to be hard for my leg to pommel in. If she goes here, it's going to be hard now for my legs to pommel in. All right, so a smart opponent's going to do this. So whenever I see I'm beat, the first thing I do, as she goes to step in, I want to get back to the inside foot position. As she goes to step in, if I can't pommel my legs in, she's too close, I take 2 hands on the floor, 2 feet to the floor, and I just push and drag myself backwards, like so. Now she goes to take a second step, I pommel back to the inside. She goes to take a second step, I pommel back to the inside. She goes to take a second step, I block the foot. Okay? So as she goes to take that second step to follow me is when I pommel my legs back to the inside. So she beats me to either hamstring, maybe she goes cross hamstring this time. I just take my 2 hands on the floor, I back away. Now she goes to recover, I bring my foot as a blocker, 1. Then I bring the foot to the inside position, foot to the inside position, and now we're ready to go into attacks. Okay, so if I find my partner's naive and steps right to the middle, I can just bring my feet back inside. If she goes straight or cross hamstring, we quickly come in, we back away, and then bring the feet back to the inside position. If I find my partner goes to flatten me out, so let's say I can't back up, my partner actually puts my back on the floor. Okay, she's getting closer and closer to a pass now. I want to retain my guard just by staying in a seated position. You saw Marcelo was huge with this. In my matches, I'm not afraid to go down to a supine position and play De La Riva, reverse De La Riva. I'm confident there, playing half guard, playing situations like that. But if you look at Marcelo, especially his match with Kron, like Kron is doing everything, like poking in his eyes, like he's doing everything he can to put Marcelo on his back, and Marcelo is just insistent. He just insists in staying in a seated position. Okay, so if you just want to retain guard, a seated position is one of the best places you can be. Okay, because your partner has to split the legs, outflank you, put you on your back before they can even start to pass. Those are the prerequisites. Okay, so let's say she does flatten me out now. She goes to step in. There's ways that I can start going into follow-up attacks to start moving back into a seated position. Okay, I can't just accept this if I want to move back to a seated position. So the second she goes to flatten me out, I hit some kind of initial off balance. As she goes to flatten me out, she goes to drive into me. Her weight's coming towards me. I hit some kind of initial kazushi, and now from here I start going into the legs. Or now I can have an ashigarami. I have 2 feet inside, which is what I wanted to enter into anyways when I was seated. I want to get 2 feet inside and go into some kind of supine guard with ashigarami, X guard, things like that. Or maybe I go to start entering into leg. She pulls away, and now I get up, I start playing a seated guard again. Okay? Or she goes to step in cross hamstring, and now she goes to flatten me out, I go to invert. Now I enter into some kind of attacks on my partner's legs, which is what we wanted anyway. Or I get some kind of initial off balance where she goes to step inside, she beats me, I go to invert, she goes to run away, and now I can recover, get back into a seated safe position, and start making contacts from a seated guard. Okay, so whenever you find your partner steps inside, you have the choice to either re-pommel back to the inside position, you have the choice to scoot back and away from your partner. If they hustle you down to your back, you have to create some kind of offensive movement, breaking their offensive cycle and going to your own offensive cycle, that you can either get to the position you wanted, where you can attack your partner's legs, or worst case scenario, they move away from you, then you can sit back up and start going into your follow-up attacks from seated guard. You can stay seated, they can't pass you, and you're in a good position to go into all of your follow-ups. Okay, so again, a lot of this in the seated instructional, but just some brief ways how to get the legs back inside, and just the goals you have in mind when you're just trying to retain guard and go into attacks. Staying in a seated position, making sure you can keep your feet inside. All right, so now we're going to look at what we can do when an opponent flanks us. So they want to look to either split the legs or outflank us. All right, and when they split the legs, they can put us on their back. If they're grip fighting and they grab our ankles, they can put us on our back. That's why we need to be strong with the grip fighting here. We looked at many grip fighting sequences in other instructionals. And if they outflank us, they can create back exposure. If I stay here, there's a lot of back exposure. She can obviously walk completely behind me. Or it'll force me to fall down to a supine position where now she's flanking me. I'm supine, and there's a real danger of me getting passed from here. Okay, so let's look at ways that we can, some ways that we can avoid this and keep our partner in front of us in a seated guard and make contact with our partner to go into our follow-up attacks after we deal with the initial retention problem. So we're going to be in here. She's going to look to outflank us. Again, she has to be in a square stance or a staggered stance in order to do this. So as she goes to outflank us, just as strikers move into the space where their opponent just was, we're going to move into the same space that our opponent just was. So as she goes to outflank me, I just take my foot and I extend it like so. I always make sure that I keep one foot folded in, because it's very common for your partner to feint with the lead leg. She goes to step, and if I go here, now instead of stepping to the outside and flanking me, she steps inside my legs. So she goes to feint one, and then steps inside, and now I'm beat. Okay, in which case I have to back away and then recover. Okay, so I always keep one foot folded in, and I reach with the opposite foot. So now she goes to outflank me, I just move into the space where she was just in. So as she goes to outflank, and now we face our partner, now we can come in and look to make contact. Okay, what I don't want is to go straight backwards. Your partner's going to move much faster than you. So as she goes to outflank me, what I can't do is this. As she goes to move, I can't look to put her back in front of me. I'm moving like this. It's never going to work realistically. When she goes to outflank me, if I just walk backwards, she just keeps following me and walks behind me. Go ahead. No matter how fast I go, you're always going to lose this battle. So I always go to the space where she was just in. She's standing here in front of me. As she goes to outflank me, now we're here, and now I have connection with my foot. Now we make an initial connection. We bring a foot to the inside, a second foot to the inside, and now we're ready to go into our attacks. Okay, so initially, if I can stay seated, I will. So she goes to outflank me. And come in here, now I'm ready to play. If I find that my partner outflanks me and puts me on my back, what can I do from here? Okay, so she goes to outflank me. I fall to my back, and I feel like I'm going to get beat from here. One great option is we can initially put our partner back in front of us and go into the same series that we did when our partner split the legs. So we can post on my partner in various ways. All right, depending on what kind of grip she has, I can post on the bicep, I can post on the shin, and I can put my partner back in front of me. And now she goes to accept the reverse del hiva. I can look to go into inversions, into attacks to the legs, or she goes to move out and away, so I can move my partner forward and now sit up and go back into a seated guard and reset. Okay, so as she goes to outflank me, I can't move. I fall down like so. I put my partner back in front of me, and I go right into a follow-up attack where I hit the initial off balance, the initial kazushi, and then from here we can look to reset or go into attacks. All right. As she goes to outflank me, same thing. I can put my partner back in front of me, and I can use outside del hiva situations, or I can put my partner's hands down to the floor, and now we can look to get back up with the initial kazushi. My partner can go to outflank me, like so, and I can just put my partner back in front and threaten to put my two legs inside, like so. Where now she goes to come on to me, she goes into an ashigarami. So she has no choice but to post on my legs and back away. Now I can come right back into a seated position and recover seated versus standing and go into make my connections. Okay, so some ways to deal with your partner outflanking you. She goes to outflank me. Initially, I want to stay seated. I just want to retain guard. I want to stay seated. I want to stay here. Now she goes to set me back down. We can look to bring our legs inside and look to threaten leg entanglements. She goes to back away, this pulls me back up, and now we can go into all of our attacks, bring your feet back inside. She goes to outflank me. I fall down. I can willingly put my partner's legs inside and split, and have her split my legs. So now we can go to all the follow-up attacks where she goes to start pressuring down into me, and tight passing, we can look to start creating situations where we can at least get our partner off balance and go back into a seated series where we can make contact and then address our partner's reactions as they come. Okay, but if we just want to maintain a seated position, retain our guard, and go into attacks, your whole thing is staying seated, getting back to a seated position if your partner puts you on your back, and then from there, bring your feet to the inside through contact with your partner, and then eventually going into your follow-up attacks with ashiguramis and X-guard variations. All right, so before we go into supine versus loose passing, we're just going to do a little closing segment on seated versus loose passing. All right. Again, there are many ways for your opponent to start to attempt to pass, and there are many ways for you to retain guard and go into your counter attacks. You have to understand that retention can never be just retention. It always has to be one and the same with retaining your guard and going into counter attacks, so that you're never in a constant defensive cycle. Okay, you can't just be retaining. So it's retain guard, attack, constant kazushi, constant attacks, so that you're in the driver's seat the whole time. You're dominating grip fighting exchanges, and you're working at what pace you want to work at, and you're forcing them to play your game. Okay, this is how you start to win matches over time. All right, when you're working in a seated versus standing, when you have a loose passer versus seated, again, your goals are relatively the same as the broad spectrum with loose passing. Okay, you never want your partner to outflank you, like so, and you always want your feet and your knees to be pointing towards your partner. All right, now you have a specific set of goals from this position. All right, I always want to make sure that my feet are pointing towards my partner once again, and I always want to look to make sure that my 2 feet stay inside my partner's knees. Okay, so I always want to ensure that wherever she goes, and now again there are tons of ways to do this. I always want to make sure that I have my partner in front of me with my feet pointing towards her. I'm winning the grip fighting exchange, and I'm looking to get my 2 feet inside of her 2 knees. Okay, if I can think about that, and I can say, okay, my ultimate final goal from seated versus standing is to get my 2 feet inside of my partner's knees, I can win from here. Okay, of course there are ways to sweep your partner where if you're seated and she's loose passing, I can go in with Tewaza techniques. I can pull the ankle and she can fall down to the ground, and we can sweep our partner. All right, but most of the time, we're looking for situations where we get an initial kazushi on a talented opponent. It's not going to just fall down. You'll go here, she'll step the foot up, I'll catch it like so, and then I'll pull myself into a situation where my 2 legs dominate the inside position, and we can go into attacks. Okay, so my ultimate goal, because the upper body's so far away, my ultimate goal in general is to keep my two feet inside of my partner's knees. Okay, and there are ways to do this. I can't let my partner split my legs. I can't let my partner put my back on the floor, whether it be by splitting my legs, whether it be by lifting my ankles. This is why I have to be dominant with the grip fighting exchanges, or whether it be outflanking me to put my back on the floor. I can't let my partner look to split my legs. I can't let my partner look to outflank me, like so. And I can't let my partner put me in a situation where she outflanks me, puts me on my back, and then especially puts me on my back and outflanks me at the same time. Okay, if she outflanks me, it's not the end of the world. Okay, because as she goes to outflank me, I can always circle like so to correct. But if I'm on my back and she puts me on my back and outflanks me, now this is a real issue now. Okay, now you're not in the driver's seat anymore. She's 100% attacking you. Okay, whereas if you stay seated and you just keep your 2 feet inside, there's no way your partner can pass your guard from here. She has to achieve the goals of putting my back on the floor first before she can look to pass me. Okay, so there's prerequisites that she has to look for before she can actually even start to pass. Or she has to split my legs, has to put my back on the floor, has to outflank me, has to do one of these things in order to actually be successful. And if you just have the broad vision in mind of keeping contact with your partner, winning the grip fighting exchanges, and eventually fighting your feet to the inside position relative to her knees, you're going to be not only be able to retain guard, but you're going to be able to attack your opponent from here. Okay? So we have, again, the overarching theme of the series for retaining versus loose passing, retaining versus tight passing. And now these are specific positions where you have specific goals, seated versus loose passing, supine versus loose passing, ashigurami variations, leg pommeling variations, where you have specific goals from specific positions. Okay, but again, everything is going to be focused on one common theme throughout the entire instructional, and that is what are our goals when our partner's loose passing, what are our goals when our partner's tight passing, and how in a live sparring situation or a competition, these will be unified. So your partner can go from tight passing to loose passing and loose passing to tight passing, in a half a second if they want to. So you have to understand what your goals are, our broad goals, and what are our specific goals from each different situation. And this is what we saw clearly now with seated versus loose passing. Now we're on to supine versus loose passing. All right, so now we're going to dive into supine retention versus loose passing. Now, this has a lot more moving parts to it than seated versus loose passing, because you saw a lot of the seated stuff in the seated instructional. But the supine instructional was basically just us attacking from our preferred positions, not our partner almost passing our guard and us having to recover and go into reattacks. So this will be a lot different. It'll be a lot more new content. All right. How we're going to break this down is we're going to move from the most desirable to the least desirable positions. Okay, meaning I'm going to go into guard retention first from my most desirable attacking positions, and then retention into attacks from my least desirable positions. Okay, the most desirable would be things like an X guard, an Ashi X, an X guard, an Ashi X. Any kind of Arimi Ashigarami, like so, any kind of Oshiro X guard, Oshiro reverse X, things like that. Okay, where I'm in the driver's seat and I have 2 feet inside of my partner's knees. Okay, I'm in the driver's seat. How can I retain guard from here when my partner, for example, beats my legs and steps past my shoulder line or hip line and goes to pass me from here? How can I recover and get my legs back into the equation? Okay. The least desirable would be in the position where my partner outflanks me and gets past my shoulder line. And now she starts to put hands on me and starts to pass from here. Okay, so we're going to break this down in my most desirable, how we can retain guard from the most desirable attacking positions to the least desirable positions. Okay, we're first going to start off when I have 2 legs inside my partner's legs, where I can dominate the space between her knees. Okay, this is the most desirable. Where now I'm completely in the driver's seat from here for the most part, and I can go to real attacks. She can peel my feet off and look to start passing me, but I can also recover from here. All right. Now, we're also going to look at situations where my partner splits my legs. Okay, we're now kind of in a neutral position where we both have attacks. So if I have 2 legs inside, I'm in the driver's seat. If my partner puts a leg inside, either with a cross hamstring like so, or with a straight hamstring like so, and she's leg pommeling, for example, now we're going to look at how we can retain and go into attacks from here. All right. And now, from a situation where my partner completely outflanks me, now she's basically in the driver's seat. This is the least desirable position, where she outflanks my legs, my feet and knees are pointing completely away from her, and now from here, she can walk past my hip or shoulder line and start to pass. Okay, so that's the general overview. We're going to break it down into 3 different situations. My 2 feet inside my partner's, retaining from a situation where we had an Ashigarami. Then retention from a situation where my partner splits my legs, either with a cross hamstring or a straight hamstring. And then finally, the least desirable positions where my partner looks to outflank me or walk past the shoulder line. My partner starts stacking me and putting my feet to the floor above my head, things like that. So we're going to start off first with Ashigarami X-guard variations, and there's a specific way we're going to do this so we can save time. And I'm not showing you 16,000 different moves from every given position that my partner could be placing her hands or her feet or her heads or her head. So we're going to go into that now.